Everybody, welcome back to the Federalist Papers series. Today we're doing the Federalist number 12, the utility of the Union in respect to revenue. My phone's acted up. Authored by Alexander Hamilton. To the people of the state of New York, the effects of union upon the commercial prosperity of the states have been sufficiently delineated. Its tendency to promote the interest of revenue will be the subject of our present inquiry. The prosperity of commerce is now perceived and acknowledged by all enlightened statesmen to be the most useful as well as the most productive source of national wealth, and has accordingly become a primary object of their political cares. By multiplying the means of gratification, by promoting the introduction and circulation of the precious metals, those darling objects of human avarice and enterprise, it serves to vivify and invigorate the channels of industry and to make them flow with greater activity and copiousness. The assiduous merchant, the laborious husbandman, the active mechanic, and the industrious manufacturer, all orders of men, look forward with eager expectation and growing alacrity. Alacrity. Alacrity? I don't know that word. Let's find out. Let's learn together. Alacrity, cheerful willingness, eagerness. Cheerful willingness, eagerness. All right, let's start that over. The assiduous merchant, the laborious husbandman, the active mechanic, and the industrious manufacturer, all orders of men, look forward with eager expectation and growing alacrity to the pleasing reward of their toils. The often agitated question between agriculture and commerce has, from indubitable experience, received a decision which has silenced the rivalship that once subsisted between them, and has proved to the satisfaction of their friends that their interests are intimately blended and interwoven. It has been found in various countries that, in proportion as commerce has flourished, land has risen in value. And how could it have happened otherwise? Could that which procures a freer vent to the products of the earth, which furnishes new incitements to the cultivation of land, which is the most powerful instrument in increasing the quantity of money in a state, could that, in fine, which is faithful to the handmaid of the labor and industry, in every shape fail to augment that article which is the prolific parent of far the greatest part of object which they are exerted? It is astonishing that so simple a truth should have ever had an adversary, and it is one among a multitude of proofs how apt a spirit of ill-informed jealousy or of too great abstraction and refinement is to lead a man astray from the plainest truths of reason and conviction. The ability of a country to pay taxes must always be proportioned in great degree to the quantity of money in circulation, and to the celerity with which it circulates. Commerce, contributing to both these objects, must of necessity render the payment of taxes easier and facilitate the requisite supplies to the treasury. The hereditary dominions of the Emperor of Germany contains a great extent of fertile, cultivated, and populous territory, a large portion of which is situated in mild and luxuriant climates. In some parts of this territory are to be found the best gold and silver mines in Europe, and yet, from the want of fostering influence of commerce, that monarch can boast but slender revenues. He has several times been compelled to owe obligations to the pecuniary succors of the nation for the preservation of his essential interest, and is unable, upon the strength of his own resources, to sustain a long and continual war. But it is not in this aspect of the subject alone that the Union will be seen to conduce to the purposes of revenue. There are other points of view in which its influence will appear more immediate and decisive. It is evident from the state of country, from the habits of the people, from the experience we have had on the point itself, that it is impracticable to raise any very considerable sum by direct taxation. Tax laws have in vain been multiplied. New methods to enforce the collections have in vain been tried. The public expectations has been uniformly disappointed, and the treasuries of the states have remained empty. The popular system of administration, inherent in the nature of popular government, coinciding with the real scarcity of money incident to a languid and mutilated state of trade, has hitherto defeated every experiment for extensive collection, and has at length taught the different legislatures the folly of attempting them. No person acquainted with what happens in other countries will be surprised at the circumstance in so opulent nations as that of Britain, where direct tax from superior wealth must be much more tolerable, and, from the vigor of government, much more practicable, than in America. For the greatest part of the national revenue is derived from taxes of the indirect kind, from imposts and from excises, duties on imported articles form a large branch of the latter description. In America, it is evident that we must a long time depend for the means of revenue chiefly on such duties. In most parts of it, excises must be confined within a narrow compass. The genius of the people will ill brook the inquisitive and peremptory spirit of excise laws. The pockets of the farmers, on the other hand, will reluctantly yield but scantily supply in the unwelcome shape of impositions. And the unwelcome shape of impositions on their houses and land and personal property is too precarious and invisible a fund to be laid hold of in any other way than by the imperceptible agency of taxes on consumption. If these remarks have any foundation, the state of things which will best enable us to improve the extend so valuable a resource must be best adapted to our political welfare. And it cannot admit of a serious doubt that this state of things must rest on the basis of a general union. As far as it would be conducive to the interests of commerce, so far it must tend to the extension of the revenue to be drawn from that source. As far as it would contribute to rendering regulations for the collection of the duties more simple and efficacious, so far it must serve to answer the purpose of making the same rate of duty more productive, and of putting it into the power of government to increase the rate without prejudice to trade. The relative situation of these states, the number of rivers which they are intersected, and of bays that wash their shores, the facility of communication in every direction, the affinity of language and manners, the familiar habit of intercourse, all these are circumstances that would conspire to render an illicit trade between them a matter of little difficulty, and would ensure frequent evasions of the commercial regulation of each other. The separate states or confederacies would be necessitated by mutual jealousy to avoid the temptations to that which the trade by the lowness of their duties. The temper of our government for a long time to come would not permit those rigorous precautions by which European nations guard the avenues to their respective countries, as well by land and by water, and which, even there, are found insufficient obstacles to the adventurous stratagems of avarice. In France, there is an army of patrols, as they are called, constantly employed to secure their fiscal regulations against the inroads of the dealers of contraband trade. Mr. Necker computes the number of these patrols as upward of 20,000. This shows the immense difficulty in preventing that species of traffic where there is an inland communication, and places it in strong light the disadvantages of which the collection of duties in this country would be encumbered, if by disunion the states should be placed in that situation, with respect to each other, resembling that of France with respect to her neighbors. The arbitrary and vexatious power with which the patrols are necessarily armed would be intolerable in a free country. Okay, cool. If, on the contrary, there be but one government pervading all the states, there will be, as to the principal part of our commerce, but one side to guard, the Atlantic coast. Vessels arriving directly from foreign countries, laden with valuable cargoes, would rarely choose to hazard themselves to be complicated and critical perils which would attend attempts to unlade prior to their coming to port. They would have to dread both the dangers of the coast and the end of detection, as well after as before their arrival at the places of their final destination. An ordinary degree of vigilance would be competent to the prevention of any material infractions upon the rights of the revenue. A few armed vessels, judiciously stationed at the entrance of our ports, might at a small expense, be made useful sentinels of the laws. And the government, having the same interest to provide against violations everywhere, the cooperation of its measure in each state would have a powerful tendency to render them effectual. Here also we should preserve by union an advantage which nature holds out to us, and which would be relinquished by separation. The United States lie excuse me, the United States lie at a great distance from Europe and at a considerable distance from all other places with which they would have extensive connections to foreign trade. The passage from them to us in a few hours or in a single night, as between the coast of France and Britain and of other neighboring nations, would be impracticable. This is a prodigious security against a direct contraband with foreign countries, but a circuitous contraband to one state, through the medium of another, would be both easy and safe. The difference between a direct importation from abroad and an indirect importation through the channel of a neighboring state in a small parcel, according to time and opportunity, with the additional facilities of inland communication, must be palpable to every man of discernment. It is therefore evident that one national government would be able, at much less expense, to extend the duties on imports beyond comparison further than would be practicable to a state separately or to a partial confederacy. Hitherto, I believe it may safely be asserted that these duties have not, upon an average, exceeded in any state 3%. In France, they are estimated to be about 15%, and in Britain, they have exceeded this proportion. There seems to be nothing to hinder their being increased in this country to at least treble their present amount. The single article of ardent spirits under federal regulation might be made to furnish considerable revenue. Upon a ratio to the importation into the state, the whole quantity imported into the United States may be estimated at 4 million of gallons, which at a shilling per gallon would produce 200,000 pounds. That article would well bear this rate of duty, and if it should tend to diminish the consumption of it, such an effect would be equally favorable to the agriculture, to the economy, and to the morals, to the health of society. There is perhaps nothing more subject of national extravagance than these spirits. What will be the consequence if we are not able to avail ourselves of the resources in question in its full extent? A nation cannot long exist without revenues. Destitute of this essential support, it must resign its independence and sink into the degraded condition of a province. This is an extremity to which no government will of choice accede. Revenue, therefore, must be had at all events. In this country, if the principal part is not drawn from commerce, it must fall with oppressive weight upon land. It has been already intimated that excises, in their true signification, are too little in unison with the feelings of the people to admit a great use being made of that mode of taxation. Nor, indeed, in the state where utmost the sole employment is agriculture, are the objects proper of excise sufficiently numerous to permit very ample collection in that way. Personal estate, as has been before remarked, from the difficulty in tracing it, cannot be subjected to large contributions by any other mean than by taxes on consumption. In populous cities, it may be enough subject to conjecture to occasion the oppression of individuals without much aggregated benefit to the state, but beyond these circles it must be in a great measure escape the eye and the hand of the tax gatherers, as the necessities of the state nevertheless must be satisfied in some mode or another. The defect of other resources must throw the principal weight of public burdens to the processes of land, and as, on the other hand, the wants of government can never obtain an adequate supply unless all the sources of revenue are open to its demands. The finances of the community, under such embarrassments, cannot be put to a situation consistent with its respectability or its security. Thus we shall not even have the consolation of a full treasury to atone to the oppression of that valuable class of the citizen who are employed in the cultivation of the soil, but public and private distress will keep pace with each other in gloomy concert, and unite in deploring the infatuation of those councils in which led to disunion. Publius. Alright, very cool. This one's about taxes. Gotta love taxes. Let's go here for a second. So, an interesting part of this, I think, is is it? The relative situation there's no. So preserve the Union by manage the United States lies. This is an interesting thing. I don't know what this has to do with taxes, really, other than the whole Union being. This is referring to the whole Union, and this is about. This whole series of articles is about the Union, but I think this part's interesting. This is a great natural advantage that the United States have when it comes to conflict. You have to get through an ocean to get to us. On both sides. Let's see. What if... No, we're in 12, not 15. Okay, that's free event from the front. I don't know where it is, but there's a part about. I don't know where it is. I find it interesting that I find this part interesting. So I guess they had patrols that go around. Army patrols constantly employed to secure their fiscal regulation against the inroad of dealers and contraband trade. These are like cops that specifically focus on black market trading of some kind, I guess. But the idea that those wouldn't be tolerated in the United States is so funny to me, because it wouldn't have then, but it probably would have now. Would be now. There's something else in here, and I can't find it. I'm sorry, I can't find it, but. Surprise at the circumstances. I'm in a nation where direct taxes in America. It's evident that we must a long time depend on these means of revenue, chiefly shipping imposition. Yeah, here we go. The pockets of the farmers, on the other hand, will reluctantly yield but scanty supplies. In the unwelcome shape of imposition on their house and land, the personal property is too precarious and invisible to a fund to be laid hold of in any other way than by imperceptible agency of taxes and consumption. Pockets of the farmers, on the other hand, will reluctantly yield but scanty supplies in the unwelcome shape of impositions on the houses and land. So what this is saying is that they have to tax their production rather than their income and their stuff because they don't have any stuff or income. I think that's what that's saying. But I find that interesting. And the best enables to improve and extend so valuable a resource must be adapted to our political welfare. Cannot admit a serious doubt that the state of things must rest on a basis of general union as far as must distinction and revenue drawn from that source. As far as it would contribute to running regulations, the collection of duties more simple and efficient. States, number of rivers. I think the idea of importing to one state and bringing it to another state is kind of interesting because, like it says here, the United States rivers and bays and one coast on one. Well, at this time, one coast on one side. So importation made it easy, and then the states. I guess the idea is that you import it into Virginia, and if you're in Tennessee or Ohio, which I don't know if they were states at this time. I don't think they were. Tennessee might have been. I don't think Ohio was. Maybe they both were. But the idea is that no, they couldn't have been. No, they definitely were not. Both of them were not. But the idea is that if you live in either of those regions, you get the import into Virginia, and then you can move it west if you would like. So it allows people to procure more goods because there's a western flow, and that happens due to freshwater bodies that move westward, I guess. So very interesting. Thank you all very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Check out the Anna Karenina series, and also check out the short stories that I'm going to start reading because I did an Ernest Hemingway short story yesterday. Probably going to record one right after this. Another one. I don't know exactly which one, but we're gonna start doing some short stories. Kind of vary up the content a little bit. Let me know if you have any specific short story authors that you would like me to read. Let me know if there are any particular Hemingway short stories that you like, because I have the complete short stories of Hemingway, so it should be in here. And anything that is for short stories, we could probably do stuff that's copyrighted because I can discuss it afterward, and that makes it fair use. But preferably copyright-free short stories. So, thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.